And that is who we are. Easy and Chris Allen on a Fantasy Fan Sportscast on the Sportscrew Radio Network at Sportscrew Radio. Follow them on iTunes and Twitter. You get all kinds of fantasy gambling, DFS, and that includes baseball that's getting ready to kick off. I know you're not the baseball guy. Welcome, Mr. Chris Allen. Happy New Year. Our first show ever in the 2020 year.
Oh, yeah.
So congratulations. We both made it this long.
Mm-hmm.
And we took off a few weeks. Unfortunately, our show hit on Wednesday nights, which, covers Christmas Day and New Year's Day. So
right.
We took a couple weeks off. Now we're ready to talk some football and I don't know what you want to talk. I don't know what we want to talk about today. I guess let's start with some coaching changes and how that might affect fantasy. And we'll go that route. And then maybe we'll talk playoffs. And we'll move there. Do you have a coaching change that you think is the most interesting? Maybe the one that affects fantasy the most right now?
I would say the one that I think affects fantasy the most, it has to be Matt Rule to the Panthers. I think that one affects fantasy the most because it involves the fantasy. Well, I would assume if Lamar Jackson he's likely the fantasy MVP this season, but I would say Christian McCaffrey probably has to be a close second. Given the way that he performed for most folks, whether it be standard or PPR, I would assume he's probably an elite fantasy asset. So anybody taking over that squad, and especially with some questions surrounding that offense, right? Because even with Christian McCaffrey back there, we have to see if Greg Olsen, if he's going to saddle up and ride off into the sunset, or if he's going to come back for one more season. Because it sounds like his, offers for him to join any staff within the booth are pretty much open forever whenever he feels like, hanging him up for good. So we'll have to see depending on if Cam Newton is going to stay, if they're going to wind up, trying to trade him or release him or whatever. But we still got, great assets with that offense. DJ Moore was a breakout star this past season. I think Curtis Samuel, I want to see what happens with Curtis Samuel because I still think he's a good receiver. It's just that with the, 3 different quarterbacks that they wound up going with throughout this entire season. I think there's a lot that, you can harness, at least there's a ton of value, right. I think there.
There's potential. I think that was what was exciting about the coaching changes this year.
Yeah.
They're happening on teams that have potential right out of right off the get-go.
Right. Right.
Unlike, when the Bengals got their new head coach, we kind of thought there was some issues where, you have, the Panthers have talent. The Browns have talent.
And we'll see how that coaching hiring shakes out.
Cowboys have talent.
For sure.
And that's unique, to have those many teams. Some people would question, do the Giants have talent? I think on offense they do. Defense is still part of their issue, maybe.
I think their defense is actually not that bad, to be quite honest with you. Their front seven isn't too hateful. I think it's been their issues have been more in the secondary, because we've seen in a number of cases where teams that have been expected to wind up smashing them have wound up kind of falling short. And I'd have to go back.
The last quarter of the season, they definitely were not runaway. They didn't just allow people to score a ton.
Right. I think they would benefit from at least a decent look from a good defensive coordinator. So let's see what Joe Judge winds up doing in terms of bringing on a defensive coordinator. Let's say if they wound up landing Wade Phillips since he got let go from the LA Rams. I think that'd be huge for a team that already has at least a few decent defensive veterans. And he could probably coach up some of the younger guys that are there. So I think that's possible. I think there's enough there that you could probably turn it into something decent.
But it does seem like the college guys, when they come in, take a little longer sometimes. I don't know if that's just to get their feet under them or just to adapt or, unfortunately, sometimes, or just the team they came up with, the team they got wasn't as good as we thought. But, so
I think it's
the thing
something
too.
to be. Yeah, it's something to be concerned about. I guess my
But we've seen really, really, really good college coaches not make it in the NFL.
Yeah.
So it's not, it's not necessarily something that doesn't happen. I mean, it's a big jump.
And we could just see, and it could be one of those things where we see like a first year success and then it winds up flopping. Because I think like when Chip Kelly, like when he wound up taking over for the Eagles, I mean, it was all great like the first season. And then after that, it, kind of started to dwindle quickly after that. But that, I think what most folks would argue that that's more of like when Chip Kelly became more of like the GM and also tried to play the coach at the same time, things kind of went off the rails. But either way,
I don't think that was part of, again, I've said it on here a million times. You give some of these defensive coordinators a whole season of viewing your schemes. And I don't think I think that's part of the problem. Skip what didn't change. The next year he's doing the same stuff and defensive coordinators caught up with him too. I mean,
I think that's part of it. And also if you bring on personnel that aren't capable of actually like running
your system, right?
Yeah. Then, I mean, that also is going to wind up like hampering that. And we saw that because especially once they started bringing on some of those guys and it's just like, they're not able to run some of the, like, not necessarily just like the complexity of the system, but just like the fast paced offense that they were required to do. Some of them just really couldn't hold up to that. And that wound up like really screwing them on the back end. Now, I don't know. And like, from what I've seen, I really need to kind of dig into like what Matt Rule was doing at Baylor. But like from all accounts, it seemed like what he was able to do, because considering after like the way that Art Briles wound up leaving like that program, it kind of seemed like they were going to be like, it was essentially like a death penalty like for that program. But how quickly he was able to kind of turn around and make that team actually like be like a contending like type of team,
right?
Like without even really like a bunch of 5-star recruits, right? Because it's not like anybody was really like clamoring to go to Baylor. So at least I think like he looks like to me, he not necessarily like a system guy. Like I don't think he's like a Chip Kelly like type of hire where he's like, he has this system and it's like a quote unquote proven system like in the college game. Because it's not like Lincoln Riley or like one of those guys where it's like, oh, you see this offense, you want to bring it to the NFL. I don't think it's really like that. I think it's he's more of like he knows how to harness the resources that he has. And he's more of like a leader type. Now we'll see, because he's bringing in like some of his coordinators and guys that he used to work with when he was in college. But I did catch one thing from the presser is that he's been reaching out to actual coaches that have been in the NFL and coached in the NFL. And he wants to bring him on the staff as kind of like a mentor for him to help him adjust to being in the NFL. And I thought that was pretty key, because I think that was one of the big things that when we've seen from other college coaches that have come into the NFL is like they want to still try and treat the NFL game like they're still in college, and they want to bring in that system and try and act like they can just run like the same type of system as it did in college. But I think Rule already knows that that's not going to work. And even with like Dave Tepper and like some of the other guys that are really like buying into this whole like reboot for the Panthers franchise, the fact that he's trying to reach out and he wants to bring on like a mentor in order to help him like kind of transition into the NFL, I think that's kind of telling. And I don't remember seeing that from like in the Chip Kelly years or anything like anything like that. So if depending on who he picks, now if he winds up picking somebody like, I don't know, like Jason Garrett or something like that, I might be a little bit concerned. But even Marvin Lewis, Marvin Lewis as a head coach mentor, I think that might actually be useful to you, because it's not like he's asking him to call plays or anything like that. Right. It's more of just living in the NFL and functioning as a head coach and leading a team of 52, 53 guys. And I think that actually might be useful. So that part right there kind of like piqued my interest.
Right. I mean, we've had that discussion. I'm a Marvin Lewis fan.
Me too, to a point. Yeah.
Unfortunately, too many people still look at the last couple of years with the Bengals versus what he did.
They had a number of good years, like prior to that.
Sure, and it is one of those things. We see it all the time, except for Belichick. Most coaches, it's not that they wear out their welcome. I think they just get set in their ways and don't make enough. But he does have. I think he's a great coach. I was excited when the Cowboys were talking to him. I would have loved to see Marvin Lewis go somewhere and do something else somewhere else where, again, I just think those last couple of years, he got a bad rep because there were injury issues too.
There were injury issues. I mean, they had it was almost like 3 seasons running, like their first round pick wound up missing the entire season.
Right.
So it's like, how do you,
it seems like almost every year.
Right.
and they still stayed competitive until those last few years. And those last few years were still more injury, I still think, than coaching. But
I agree.
I would have loved to have seen him. And to be honest, I would have loved to have seen him go to the Browns.
Either one. And I think a lot of people are kind of trashing him because I do agree, like with the recency bias and the way that he kind of left the Bengals, I do think that there's a lot of that stench like still on him.
Right.
And I say
just don't recall what he came into.
Right. Yeah. And I think give it a couple of years, like almost like the Mike McCarthy thing. Like you just step away from it for a little bit,
right?
And just kind of let like kind of the hype and stuff, all that stuff like kind of die down. And then probably like next season, I think his name will come back up again. And then he can wind up finding like a different job. And I think he'll be able to succeed. Right. I really do.
Again, when I first, was paying attention though, there was so many good teams out there. Now, a lot of them are already got, coaches except for Cleveland right now. Yeah. And now, the few teams that don't have, I don't know. Again, it still could, I don't think Cleveland's probably in the running either. But, when I heard him interviewing with the Cowboys, I was a little excited for him. Mm-hmm. And what do you think of the Cowboys situation now? I mean, obviously that team has talent on offense and has talent on defense too. I mean,
sure.
Just a year or two, their defensive, was one of the top defenses. So,
yeah, and I think that I understand the pick because I understand them wanting to go with that because they're essentially like they're in a window, right? Because there's only so long before that team is essentially like they're capped out, right, in terms of how many players that they're going to wind up having to pay. Right. I mean, because they're already in this position where it's like they're going to try and have to extend Amari, pay Dak, and that's already starting. But now coming up, it's just like, well, are you going to keep some of those guys on that are also on the defensive side of the ball too, while having to pay for both of your offensive stars, on top of already paying Ezekiel Elliott? So I think they're in a window. They know they're in a window. So trying to go with like essentially rebooting like the Panthers are doing while trying to bring on one of these college coaches, one of these younger guys, that I don't think that would have really worked. It might have, but I think it's easier for them to go with somebody that's been in that type of situation. So if they were going to go with, let's say, a Pat Shermer who got, punted by the Giants, or Mike McCarthy who's taken his year off and kind of, I guess, retooled himself into this analytics guru or something like that, that makes sense to me. Now, whether or not that's going to work, I mean, that's a whole other thing. I mean, you can speculate on whether or not he's going to try and implement more play action because Dak actually worked well with play action, but they really use Randall
Cobb more.
That was kind of my thing because, like, I wonder what Randall Cobb's like take on it was since he kind of left. I mean, Mike McCarthy in one of his worst seasons. So, like, how does that work out? I mean, I would love to. I would love to have been a fly on the wall, like when he heard. Well, just when he heard about it, what was his reaction?
Yeah,
like there were some players in the league that when Ron Rivera got hired by Washington, there were a number of like Panthers guys that were just like, you guys down in Washington, you guys gonna love him. You guys are taking him on. Even like Josh Norman. I mean, Josh Norman, who plays for Washington now, he knew. I mean, he obviously knows like Ron Rivera, and he was excited for the fact that, I mean, even though it doesn't really sound like Josh Norman is going to be back with the team like next season.
And to be honest, I forgot. I talked about that on another podcast. That was my, I was surprised how quickly Rivera I thought right now, to be honest, he was one of the better options out there for any team.
Oh yeah.
And for him to so quickly pick what some people think is one of the worst options as far as talent.
Yeah, that was kind of surprising to me because if it seemed like if there was even an inkling of Dallas moving on from Jason Garrett, because I would have thought he would have held out.
The Giants, even Cleveland. Yeah. I mean, we already talked about teams that are better than Washington. Now, and I brought this up though because football people like to always think that these decisions are based on football and not life and family. This is by far the closest team to where he lives.
Yeah, that's true.
There is not much, so I know a little bit about his, I mean, he has kids, he has family and, obviously this is a job where, he's not moving across the country, he's not moving to Cleveland, or Dallas.
And I think somebody had mentioned it's one of like the national like media reporters or whatever. They had like sources or even like he mentioned it or something along those lines that he was looking for a project. So it's looking like it was like something that he wanted to try and like help build like from the ground up.
Right.
He didn't want the pressure of having to get into the playoffs like from the
I don't
jump.
think anybody would expect him to win next year. So he's going to have a few years. Well, right. Yeah, I think the Cleveland and Dallas jobs we kind of are hoping you win now.
Yeah, they come with caveats.
The Panthers are just a notch below that.
Right. Yeah. And all the rest of those jobs, like they really do come with caveats. Like they're expecting like a 1 to 2 year turnaround, where with Washington, it's like if you can't make it with over the next 2, 3, 4 years, that might be okay for Washington.
Now,
but for the Giants and all the rest of them, not looking.
Speaking of Washington, did you see our boy almost get a touchdown?
I did, and actually, I saw him get mentioned. During their last game. Yeah, they were talking about him like on the telecast, and I was telling my wife, I was like, "That's Wes, like that's our guy." Like, yeah, we talked about him and everything. That's awesome.
Yeah, he recovered ended up not being a fumble, but it was a good spike. We had again here in town. He was tweeted quite a bit.
That was really cool to see him
kind of exciting. I got a wedding invitation for Wesley.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
congrats,
that's happening for him. So it's a big year for him. He just finished his first NFL season. He's getting married and all that, but it was pretty exciting. Try to get him on the show here.
Tell everybody, or can you mention like when the date is? It's going to be like before camp starts or something like that.
No, I can't say anything.
Okay, can't say anything. All right, I understand. All right,
but
at least we know he's going to be back home, so that's awesome.
Well, it's me plus one. I don't know. I guess I could tell the wife she can stay home.
I'll go.
Have you ever been to an NFL player's wedding?
I have not. I could actually put that, cross that off my bucket list. So,
yeah, right.
I'll go.
Yeah, and see, but he's going to get Rivera now. That's kind of exciting.
Yeah. I'll probably wind up getting kicked out of the wedding though, because I just want to ask him a bunch of questions.
And I don't know. And then the game where I don't know if you noticed the game where Adrian Peterson broke one of the records that he broke there at the end.
Yeah.
Wesley was involved in that play.
Yep,
and,
he sure was.
At the end of the play, I remember I saw Wesley and Peterson pat him on the pads walking by. I think that's kind of cool. That kind of stuff. If your life, I hope he plays for 14 or 15 years, Wes. But if it's only a couple years or something happened, you're like, yeah, but and I got the block for Adrian Peterson. There's
only so many people that he's played for 2 franchises. And there are probably quite a few people that can say that. But still, that's in a pretty small group of folks.
Cool. Right?
Yeah.
And
be able to block for a Hall of Famer? Why not?
And they have the second pick in the NFL draft. Do you think we're going to have they're pretty Buckeye heavy right now in Washington. Do you think they're going to have a new defensive end from Ohio State there? Do you think the Bengals are going to go? I hate that they're going to go quarterback. I just do.
You almost kind of have to at this point. That's kind of the sad part.
That's baloney.
I'm just saying that. I don't agree, but I would say that at least
quarterbacks just don't work out more than they work out.
Right, but it's, I guess, from a draft standpoint, you would rather try and use that capital in order to hit on a quarterback than trying to hit on any of the others, because from all the analysis I've seen so far, at least for this upcoming class, running backs are kind of There's some pretty decent wide receivers, and tight ends are always kind of a mixed bag. So if you're going to do it this class, this would probably be the class in order to do that. I haven't really looked at the prospects on the defensive side. There probably are quite a few good ones.
Well, I do think
I can understand
State,
though.
I do think Young from Ohio State is, to me, the other option. They need someone that gets to a quarterback. They need a sack guy. I'm not saying anybody is a can't miss, but it's easier on the defense that even if you aren't a superstar, you can still help the team.
Yeah. Where
in the quarterback spot, you know what? If you don't become the superstar, you're almost overlooked anyway. It's just, I don't know. We've had this discussion multiple times. I don't think Dalton's terrible. And if he has a decent defense and most of his offense is healthy, he's going to be okay. He can, I think Andy Dalton can drive a really, really nice boat, pretty fast and not do anything as long as the boat doesn't have holes in it or,
right.
No gas or anything like that.
But we've seen that the Bengals can't create a situation for him to actually succeed, where he needs to have those perfect situations in order to actually thrive.
I think but my argument would be we don't know anything of a rookie quarterback, though. That's
true.
We don't know that either.
Yeah, after the last couple of seasons, though, we've seen some pretty decent rookie quarterbacks come in that have wound up I'd say having higher ceilings than Andy Dalton has ever shown. I mean, just this past season alone, we saw Daniel Jones straight up come off the bench and throw for 4 or 5 touchdowns in a game. Now, granted, that was against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but he wound up reaching heights that we've never really seen Dalton hit before. And Trubisky, even in his freshman year, he wound up hitting some pretty decent ones. Now Trubisky overall, he's horrible. We're talking about ceiling type heights,
right?
And even if they have serviceable floors, but their ceiling is higher than Andy Dalton, I would say from a prospect standpoint, I would much rather have that because we've seen what the heights that Andy Dalton can offer.
But my argument is you can get that in the second and third round too, and I'm still not convinced that the guy from South Carolina, right? That they gave 3 or 4 games to, that was even a good test. Again,
Finley?
Yeah.
I don't know, because with Finley, I think it wasn't just an issue of him having errors in terms of reading the field. His arm strength, it did really seem unless the game conditions were horrible and he was throwing in 50-mile-an-hour winds, it did look like his arm strength was just it just wasn't there. Now, granted, it's not like he had people to throw to downfield because John Ross was still injured.
That was my argument. See,
and all that.
I thought it was more of who he was throwing to, not necessarily how.
That's entirely possible, but it did seem like arm strength really wasn't a thing for him. And regardless of who you look at, whether it's, I know everyone's already saying Joe Burrow is going to wind up going to Cincinnati because he's from Ohio and all the other stuff.
Yeah,
and that's fine. But I'd rather see what else is out there versus going with what we already know.
But that's my point. It has to be Burrow.
Yeah.
Or it has to be Young. It's going to be one of those two.
Yeah.
Because if they're going quarterback, they have to take Burrow. If they decide to go some other direction, to me, it has to be Young. I don't think there's anybody else out there than those two that you would want to look at and think,
no, because I'm not 100% sold on Jalen Hurts. A great story and all that. I think he's fine. Right. But I don't think that there's really never been anything about Cincinnati's system that has lent itself to.
My argument would still be I still think there's a chance 1 or 2 decent quarterbacks, because there are so many okay ones in the NFL right now. I think the Bengals could take Young first here and still come around in the top of the second and still get what some people might think a first-round quality quarterback.
It's possible.
And I would rather see him do that because I don't think you're going to get a Young, a type defensive guy necessarily in the second round because anymore, linemen and defensive guys are going as early as running backs and in most cases even quarterbacks. But
yeah, I'm trying to remember, but I thought Quinnen Williams, who wound up going to the Jets, I thought he got taken fairly high as well, last season.
Right.
But so it's not impossible, but I think just looking at where they're at right now, where the Bengals are at right now, I'd be really shocked if they wound up going in a different direction in terms of taking a quarterback. And
I really, unless something major happens, I still think they're going to have a decent pick next year also. That
wouldn't surprise me.
And see, I was with everyone when the Giants picked Barkley. I think we had this discussion. I was on the side of if you have a chance to get a great player, even in a position that may not be the one that you need the most, I still think you have to take that, that type of a player. And in this case, it's worked out for the Giants. They now have a quarterback. I think so. They now have Barkley and Jones. I think Jones is going to be okay. I'd rather have the Jones-Barkley combination than I guess I'd have to stop back and think. There was 2 or 3 quarterbacks that they, passed on or could have got instead, and none of them, did great last year.
Well, they passed on taking no, because that wasn't the same class.
No, it was a different class. Lamar Jackson would have been the only one, but that wasn't his class either. So,
right. So this past season, I don't really think off the top of my head, I can't think of somebody that wound up performing, I guess, way better than Daniel Jones.
Right.
I'd have to think on that.
That's my point. I just think if Young, in my book now.
Kyler wound up going like first, so I guess it wouldn't matter.
No, right. Would have been the same thing.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm like I said,
they could have gotten Gardner Minshew.
I'm a bingos. Yeah, Minshew. I mean,
waited till like the 6th round.
maybe Tom Brady doesn't sign and the Bengals just pick him up. I don't know. Would you be happy with Tom Brady? And
I mean, it would put. I mean, no, I would not be happy with Tom Brady because I'm an ex-Bengals fan because I'm not going to support a franchise that's run so horribly. So the only reason that
you're not an ex-fan, you're just
because I can't support teams that wind up
it's
put
our
themselves
team.
in holes. Now my interest was piqued when they signed Zach Taylor, and I think that's worked out. I think it's worked out well. That's a whole other conversation. Mm-hmm. But I think the only reason why that they would wind up signing Tom Brady is to put butts in seats. And I don't like that because Tom Brady, what is he going to offer the team?
The Bengals have never cared about butts in seats.
Oh, that's the only reason that they do
that
anything.
Organization is fine with their TV money.
It's a business.
Well,
it is not a
Tom
sports
Brady.
franchise.
We also know that. That's not the kind of player they would sign.
Oh, yeah. Tom Brady would never sign there because there's absolutely zero chance of them making a deep playoff run. The man's 42, 43 years old.
But here's what but there are going to be a handful of, I don't know, Andy Dalton / type quarterbacks available next year, including, and I mean, again, we already said Tom Brady, but there could be a Cam Newton. There's going to be
Phillip Rivers.
Phillip Rivers. No, I'm thinking the guy Tannehill took over for.
Ryan Fitzpatrick? Marcus Mariota, you mean?
Mariota, which I don't know. Would you rather have Mariota going in next year or Andy Dalton?
To be quite honest with you, I'd probably still rather have Andy Dalton.
See, I disagree. I think we've seen this before where young quarterbacks don't work out where they were drafted.
Yeah.
And then 5 years later, they go to another team and people go, oh, that's what we thought. Because it's just now different,
Yeah.
I don't know.
But again, that's more of me looking at. I'm biased because I'm looking at what Marcus Mariota was, not what he could be. Right. And even at his heights, I mean, man, I just don't. Again, but I think it goes back to my earlier point in that I don't think there's been anything about Cincinnati's offensive system that lends itself towards, I guess, elevating the talents of a running quarterback.
And again, I don't think they're going to change much. I think they need to draft, obviously later they need offensive line help.
They just need to be healthy. I mean, we started the season down one.
Right. And we don't know what's going to happen with AJ Green. But we'll see. It'll be a fun off season for us Bengals fans.
It'll be interesting for sure.
You're a Bengals fan. I know it. Don't say you're an ex-Bengals fan. I know you're a Bengals fan.
Well, I mean, I'll probably wind up, watching.
Now, I would also love for them to just trade the pick. I would much rather them trade that pick and get another, a late number 1 and another early number 2 or something, or I still think I would rather them get more players.
I don't ever see them doing that.
Yeah,
I mean, but sure.
I don't either, but the only thing it says maybe, we do know the way the Brown family works. You don't have to pay a late number 1 and an early number 2 as much money as the number 1. Mm-hmm. So there is a money thing there, and that is part of their situation too. They're a little frugal sometimes. So, to me, that's the only hope I have is that they'll go, we just don't want to pay a first round guy or a first pick guy. Now, luckily, the way the NFL has changed, and we've had that argument too, if it's good or bad, none of those guys aren't, they're paid a certain amount. They're not getting those $20 million contracts and never played in the NFL before.
Right.
So I don't know. It'll be kind of exciting.
Yeah.
I think the offseason in general is going to be exciting for fantasy people, and football in general. Seems like a lot of things going on. I don't know if I'm paying more attention now that I'm a little more involved or if it's that the Bengals are in dire straits. It just seems like, there's, again, we're already seeing it, we talked about it. Teams that have good potential, getting new coaches,
Well, it's a changing of the guard, to be quite honest with you.
Right. The AFC has, I think they said the other day, but this is going to be the first time. It's guaranteed now. The AFC is going to have someone in the Super Bowl that's not a Manning, not a
Roethlisberger, or Brady,
and not a Brady.
Yeah.
It's hard to believe it's gone that many years. And I forget that, like over 12 years or 15 years. I forget what they said.
Yeah.
Those have been the only 3 AFC guys there.
Right. So I think that it's I mean, I think that's good to see that turnover, at least at the top, and that kind of that filters down to us in the fantasy world, because now we're looking at, instead of focusing on Tom Brady, and like we know that Tom Brady, I think he's looked like the most washed in terms of where he's at in his career over the past couple of seasons.
Peyton Manning looked a lot worse than
he did. Peyton Manning looked way worse. I mean, I still remember him getting benched in like the same game that he wound up breaking the TD record.
Right.
So I mean, it's happened. We've seen that before, but at the same time, we have this influx of talent, like at the same position, like where you find yourself kind of rooting for some of these rookies. I mean, we've been watching like Kyler Murray, we've been watching Lamar Jackson's in his sophomore season. But I mean, Daniel Jones, I mean, we saw like Ryan Tannehill kind of like resurrect his career. I mean, so like the NFL has been like full of these, and Ryan Fitzpatrick, I mean, like leading people to
the Tannehill thing to me is still a question.
Because
I think it's back to what I always go back to. I think it's back to offensive coordinators didn't prepare all year to play the Panthers or to play
the Titans.
With Tannehill. And now, these last 5 or 6 games, I don't think people understand how hard it is to change your whole philosophy for one, when you finally play somebody.
It's definitely an interesting case in terms of like that almost like I wouldn't say like a complete 180 flip, but after seeing so much of Tannehill in Miami, and him just like, constantly, like it was check down after check down. And that's where we saw Jarvis Landry, like getting, 11 targets for like 5 yards a clip.
You can't take away that the situation is much better also.
Well, true. But I mean, but at the same time, did you ever expect him to be like making all this noise in the fantasy world, throwing to a rookie? And I mean, essentially, like 2 rookies.
Yeah, but
Johnny Smith has been in the league for much longer than that. But
Miami didn't have a running game the whole time he was there, and there's nothing that makes a quarterback look better.
Arian Foster was there, like while Ryan Tannehill was there.
Aaron Foster wasn't. He wasn't Aaron Foster when he was there. He was hurt, and he was hurt half that season.
Kinda.
Okay, I'm just saying it's not the same thing.
Frank Gore? But I don't think Frank Gore was there.
But it is back to one of those things where he was with Miami all those years, right from a rookie, and now he's with a different team, different philosophy, different. Unfortunately, it's like anybody. I mean, you probably remember. Remember your first, and I'll use the word real job. I don't know how many jobs you even had. Maybe the job you have now is still your first job. But remember that first real job when you think, man, this must be the way it is everywhere. And then the second real job, you go, no, it's not. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm talking the good and the bad. You know what I'm saying? I mean, so to be drafted by a team and struggle all those years and have to deal with it and everything, and then go somewhere else and go, wait a minute, it is done different place. You know what I'm saying? I mean, so that's back to my, thing about the Bengals and maybe getting some of these high, draft pick quarterbacks that haven't done anything for 4 or 5 years. And maybe you bring them on. Now, maybe the Bengals organization isn't the one, but they do have a coach that maybe could take somebody,
That's fair. Yeah. I mean, we just don't know.
It's hard to say Rivers, but, I still think there's a few quarterbacks out there that wouldn't cost a fortune that, could come in and maybe in a different situation with a coach that is offensive minded and do something. I don't, I mean, anything's possible. And I don't know.
I think so.
Is Fitzpatrick going to be a starter at the beginning of next season?
I don't think so. Because I think that the main reason why Tua wound up declaring for the draft and not returning to Alabama for his senior year is because he was told that he's going to wind up getting picked by somebody within the first 5 or 6 picks or something like that.
There's no way I want him. I would not pick him with that injury.
No, I think Miami's going to wind up taking him.
Yeah,
that's kind of been the quote unquote unkept secret like the entire season was that they were going to wind up taking Tua. So, I mean, if they wind up doing it, that means they're committed to him. Now, they could, and since they already have Rosen there, I mean, depending on what Fitzpatrick costs, they could wind up keeping all three, I guess. I don't know what the contract situation
you could
would
have
be.
all three of them, and that'd be less money than most teams are paying their number one.
Right. So it's entirely possible that they wind up running in that direction, and they just keep Fitzpatrick, see where Tua is at in terms of his rehab.
I forgot about Rosen. Rosen is one of those very high draft picks.
Yeah, he was the first rounder.
And actually, wasn't that part? That was part of the Barkley draft, right? He was up there,
I think so.
Which that's the point. The Giants could have had Rosen and not Barkley, and now they have Barkley and not Rosen. That doesn't look terrible.
Well, I don't know. But
that's my point. I mean, Rosen in a different situation, who knows? Again, unfortunately, I don't think Miami was the best shot for a young guy that was struggling anyway to go.
No, he went to Arizona to begin with, and that was even worse.
Well, that's what I'm saying. He was drafted by Arizona. He was drafted by Arizona, and then you could tell they gave up on him in a hurry.
Yeah, and I think they kind of, I mean, that whole organization at the time was like kind of in a bad spot.
But that's my point. So I'm not sure they gave up on him for any good reason.
Right. It was just that they wanted to move on, completely change over. Right. They got a new they had
a new coaching staff, and all that. They wanted their own guy.
Yeah.
So,
Kyler Murray's better than Josh Rosen, so it's not like they wound up, going in the wrong direction. It's just that, Rosen was just kind of the unfortunate fallout or collateral damage from making that decision.
Right. So we'll see. Like I said, it's going to be an exciting offseason.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
We obviously have
almost less than I'm actually not as excited about the draft. I mean, I kind of am. I've got my fingers and toes in the dynasty world and all that. So I'm actually excited about the 2020 class, but I'm really excited about this free agency thing. I mean, I don't the whole Tom Brady thing. I'm 90% certain he's going to wind up coming back with the Patriots. Now we'll see about their coaching staff, since they already lost, Joe Judge, and Josh McDaniels is likely going to wind up taking the Browns job.
Goes that. I don't know. The teams that need quarterbacks don't need a 40-year-old.
I think it's just going to be him and Belichick. They're going to try and win it all one more time, and then everybody rides off.
Their offensive coordinator is still talking out there rumors of going somewhere, and then the rumor is, would Brady follow him
to Cleveland?
Well, that's
especially when they already have Baker Mayfield on the third year of his rookie contract.
That's if he goes to Cleveland. I mean, if he goes somewhere else, we'll see. Yeah. I don't know. I'm agree with you. He's going to retire a Patriot, or he's going to play one more year for the Patriots.
Yeah, I just can't see him. I know people are talking about I would, if it was in my fantasy world, he would wind up going to the Colts. That'd be where I would really like to see him. But I just don't see that happening. I don't see I just don't see him leaving. It just doesn't make any sense to me. But for the rest of the free agents, I mean, where's Phillip Rivers going to wind up?
Well, that's the thing. I think actually, the big rumor is if Brady would leave, a lot of people say it would be to the Chargers, because he has ties. Well, I've heard that a couple places have said it, because I guess he has obviously California ties.
Well, sure, but that offensive line is way worse than the Patriots.
Huh?
That offensive line is way worse than the Patriots. So I don't understand why you would wind up going there. Wide receivers are way better.
Offensive weapons wise, I think they have more. They have more weapons than the Patriots.
Oh, that's night and day. I mean, you have at least an inside guy in Keenan Allen, an outside guy in Mike Williams, a tight end in Hunter Henry, at least Austin Eckler. We'll see what Melvin Gordon winds up doing during free agency, because I'm sure they're going to wind up punting him, off to some other team.
Right. And their defense isn't horrible. I just don't think they played that well this year for some reason.
Yeah, a lot of stars on that team.
I think they have talent, right?
Yeah.
So, we'll see. But I'm not holding out on any meals, waiting on what Tom Brady is going to do.
No,
because back to fantasy. I don't think Tom Brady goes anywhere that changes his fantasy value a whole lot one way or the other.
No, because I think
in single quarterback leagues, he's still at the bottom. He's 15
the Colts. That's the only one that would change my thought process on his value. That would be the Colts.
It wouldn't bump him a lot, though. It couldn't.
I think it could. They have a good young core in terms of wide receivers. T.Y. Hilton is he's older, but he's still good. Their offensive line is one of the best in the league. Their running back and Marlon Mack is he wound up being an RB1 or top 12 or close to it. So
he's not playing Indianapolis. He's going
I'm
to
just
LA,
saying, like, if he did,
LA, he's going to go to California, LA, or he's going. The only other place,
and they play in a dome too, so that wouldn't even really matter.
The only other place in my mind, and I'm not. I use the word fantasy, and I know they might say they have a quarterback already, but I could see where Tom Brady would say, "I wouldn't mind being the first quarterback for the Las Vegas football team." City of stars. Talk about a place where old people go and still get paid $1 zillion to come out on stage for a half hour.
Him and John Gruden, though, I just do not see that.
I'm not, the team is not why I'm thinking it. I'm only thinking it 100% in. You know what? What a stage. Just what a stage to play your last year.
And do you even really think that those two will be able to mesh, considering that whole stink of after the Tuck rule? That would never work out.
We don't know that stuff.
Oh, come on.
I think
John Gruden, he has to hate them.
I think John Gruden is a good enough football man to go, hey, you know what? If we got a chance to get Brady, we'll take Brady. I don't know. I'm just saying. I'm not saying it'll happen. That's the one I would love to see Tom Brady go. You know what? I mean, Las Vegas. Tom Brady would be on billboards everywhere in that town.
Yeah.
Their
offensive line is still good.
They would sell tickets.
Yeah.
He'd be at the Cher show, the Celine Dion. They'd have white tigers in a cage with him. He could own that town for 1 year because look, and I know, are you a hockey guy at all? What the Las Vegas hockey team did their first season. Las Vegas bought
the Knights.
Yes, and they bought into it. I mean, they were selling out. Actually, I
heard quite a bit about them.
Meaning, they proved that there's fans there. And if you want to, and again, I'm just saying, 1 year of going, you know what? Black and who doesn't want to retire or who doesn't want to play their last game in black and silver and change that attitude of Tom Brady? Now, you may not know it because you're a young pup, but do you know the last Patriots quarterback to leave and go to the Chargers? Or to the Raiders?
To the Raiders? No.
Yes. Jim Plunkett.
Oh, yeah.
Plunkett left the Patriots, went to the Raiders, and went to the Super Bowl. So it's possible.
That was like how many decades ago?
In the 70s, but that doesn't even matter. Plunkett. He went to the Super Bowl. He has a Super Bowl ring. And before that, he was a lot of people thought a horrible quarterback with the Patriots. So
sure.
I'm just saying this is a chance for Tom to, like I said, he would be on every taxi cab in Las Vegas. They'd have a picture of Tom Brady. They would sell that stadium out. That's a big stadium they built in there too.
I just can't see him doing it. I think that'd be all sorts of like drama surrounding that. Like, how are they going to wind up? How's Gruden and Tom Brady going to get along? There will be highlights of that game, of that playoff game every time.
If that happens, you'd be interested.
Oh, they'd have to be on Hard Knocks. That team would have to be on Hard
Knocks. It would have to be even more. It would have to be harder knocks.
I mean, they'd have to bring them back for another because they already had the Raiders on.
I would pay twice for HBO to have if it was, and to play for Gruden. And again, I even see that in Gruden. I even see Gruden doing it just to piss off Belichick.
No, probably. Yeah.
I mean, it's just Gruden's a whole different thing altogether too.
No, he's a different dude.
And what he did with that team is surprising, and they got a young core there.
Yeah.
I'm not a Carr fan.
I'm kind of meh on Carr.
I am too.
I mean, a good guy.
Okay.
Just
I'm going to roll all the way back forward. Carr or Andy Dalton?
Andy Dalton.
See, I kind of agree with that too. Darn it. I thought we could argue that one, but
I think Andy Dalton will take chances. I mean, it burns him and it winds up burning the rest of the team. I don't think Carr takes too many chances.
I agree. And Antonio Brown wants to play with, Tom anyway. They could both back, again, both in Las Vegas.
The Raiders are not going to take AB back.
That would be awesome. No, but that would definitely be a show I'd watch.
Yeah, that would never happen. Even if he somehow winds up beating off the commissioner's exempt list, there would be no way the Oakland would take him back. Well, I mean, I know he's not playing in Oakland anymore, but still.
The Oakland Raiders. Tom Brady. I would.
And you think that place? I mean, for a man that already has like a massive ego in Antonio Brown, do you really think Las Vegas would be the best place for him?
Oh no. But I'm just saying it'd be fun. It'd be fun to watch the show.
Oh yeah, but still no.
Yeah, but like I said, in the old days, the Raiders would make that happen. They pay the old guy to come down there and sell tickets. Again, Jim Plunkett was old with the Patriots when he went out there and still won a Super Bowl.
Sure.
Now he wasn't 43 or whatever. I mean, that's back in the day. He was probably closer to 29 or 30, and that's when quarterbacks were considered old back then.
Almost in their prime.
Well, because they used to get tackled a few times every game, not a couple times every season. So,
right.
Again, because we're only, we have January, we have playoff games. February, a Super Bowl.
I think right at the beginning of February, like the second.
But the end of not OTAs, the college workouts. That's the end of February or 1st of March.
What, when the combine is?
Yeah, combine. Isn't that the end of February, 1st of March?
Let's find out. NFL combine. So that's going to be on February 23rd.
Right. So
ends on March 2nd.
And then, the whole thing, the NFL, there's a lot. It seems like every month from here on in, there's at least something going on.
Essentially,
that, will be pretty big.
Let's see. When is the NFL draft for 2020? Actually, they don't have that yet.
Like the 2020 NFL schedule. No, it's set.
Yeah, Thursday. Yeah, April 23rd.
April 23rd.
Essentially every month.
There's something going on.
Something going on. Because then, like May, I think starts like rookie camp, and then June they're gonna
OTAs, and then July
back in camp.
And I think July isn't the end of June or July when most of the signings will have to be done by, or at least the ones that if you want to keep under contract. I mean, it's going to be, it's going to.
NFL. They're kind of smart in terms of like their whole marketing and scheduling and whatnot, because there's no way you can like really tune out the NFL for any stretch of time, like during the off season, because there's going to be something going on.
Right now,
and especially with Tom Brady now, like in free agency, like one of like the best quarterbacks of all time, there's going to be a story, somewhere along the way about him going on like every single day. And the fact that he's like, and this is the part that bothers me the most about Tom Brady, is that he's like self-aware to the fact that he's kind of dorky and funny on social media. So it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest that he just drops a picture of himself like wearing a Chargers uniform, like on Twitter at some point, just to watch Raiders or something like that, just to like watch like the social media
go off.
Yeah, just go off, and like the media has to then report on it or whatever. When he's already like signed his contract with the Patriots or whatever for the next like 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, and they decide, let's don't tell anybody.
I'm calling it right now that's probably what he's going to do.
Who's the second biggest name that we're going to see out there? I mean, obviously you already mentioned Gordon is a free agent.
Yeah,
I guess he's kind of free agent like, because I still think the Chargers actually controlling one. I mean, I think they can put the team thing on him one more year if they want. Now, I think they've already. I thought that was part of the deal. They said they wouldn't do that, but he's a big free agent.
AJ Green's a free agent.
Who?
AJ Green. He's a free agent. Amari Cooper, he's a free agent. Drew Brees is a free agent.
Isn't Dak?
Dak's a free agent.
Technically a free agent.
Well, yeah, until like the season's officially over or whatever. But Dak will be a free agent.
Right.
I mean, most of those guys are likely to sign. I mean, Drew Brees will likely resign with New Orleans unless he decides to hang him up. AJ Green, I mean, that's going to be a big offseason story. We'll see what he wants to do. Tannehill's a free agent, but I think they're already like trying to work in some sort of extension for him. Phillip Rivers, we already talked about him.
Technically, wouldn't you say? I know you said I don't think Brady. Brady's big in name, but I think actual players isn't Josh Gordon. Not Josh Gordon. Isn't Gordon from the Chargers?
Melvin Gordon.
Melvin. He's probably the biggest.
Yeah, in terms of like running backs. Yeah, he has to be
what I would say real fantasy guy.
Yeah.
Meaning all the ones we named aren't big fantasy.
Actually, no, I'm looking at a list. Actually, Derrick Henry is going to be a free agent. I mean, he'll get extended, obviously. Yeah. But yeah.
And see, a lot of those, like I said, have the tag they can put on them, so that you don't really.
Yeah. Well, they'll probably wind up playing one of those games, like with his contract and all that.
Yeah.
But
which, we only got a few more minutes. And I didn't want to waste any time. I didn't want to start the show with, bragging about who won the Sportscrew Radio Network, championship during a draft where I podcasted the whole time. I actually made a few mistakes in the draft that actually paid off, made a trade that just sealed my team. I truly could not have managed the team any better, and no one else could have done what I did. So that definitely puts the stamp on my skills, but I wanted to give you at least, an open forum to congratulate me because, I did not feel much love for you. You were rooting for everyone I was playing. You were rooting for my son. You were rooting for the UPS rookie driver. And I just mowed through them like they were nothing. And, even without your help or support, I still put this show and what we do here on top. And
but I was cheering for Dylan. I mean, when he was playing against me, I said I was hoping he was going to win. So
only because you didn't want me to beat you.
No,
you did not want the pressure of having to play.
No, because I had already beaten you once before, so I didn't really need to do it again.
Regular
seasons, that. I mean, I'd already accomplished that.
Regular seasons are just times to fine tune.
A one game sample. I mean, I already beat you soundly, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, I can pull up the score. If you want me to,
but it doesn't matter. When I pull up the final standings, it has me at the top. That's all.
I think it worked out well for you. I think it did, but I didn't need to beat you again. I'd already done it, so I wanted to give somebody else a chance, and I mean, he didn't make it. I mean, it is what it is.
Established the run, scored 2,131 points. That's respectable, and I had 2,058. So you had about 70 points over the whole season on me. Points average per game. I averaged 146 per game, and that's points against. Points for. I would say that can't be. I averaged 158 a game, and you averaged 164. So we were close.
But who was ahead?
Who won this? Who won the championship?
I'm just asking who was ahead in terms of like points per game. I mean, during the regular season.
Who is going to have the belt? That's all. I'm just saying.
I'm happy for you. I'm happy for you.
All right. That's all. With sincerity.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
You did well. Congratulations on your championship. I think you did well.
And this is the keeper league, so we'll carry this through to next year. People are going to be aiming for me. But
you always come for the king, so you got to understand that.
Right. That's right. I mean, I was proof that. The regular season, I get it. You scored a few more points, but I was building a championship team.
Okay. So that's what it was. Like your team was just in transition just so you could make the run when it counted. Like when it really meant something, you knew you were going to win. Right. So it didn't matter. I mean, you lost to me by about 60 points.
That's fine. I took a break.
Okay. So that's all.
I didn't want you to not be comfortable with doing the show with me.
Oh, well, no. Again, as I said, I mean,
I had two money leagues, 3 money leagues, 3 playoff appearances, 2 championship.
Well done.
And then I did get my ass in the League of Anarchy. I got my ass kicked.
Oof.
Yeah. Actually, I did not get my ass kicked. We both he scored like 220. The guy who won that league, Clint, had over 220 points in both the Super Bowl week and the semifinals week. So he beat me in the semifinals and then went on the next week and scored another 224. He'd have beat me again. I had 200 points.
Yikes.
In the one, but he still beat me. And then even in the Super Bowl week, I still set a lineup because I was gambling with other people.
Oh, okay.
And he still would have beat me by 20 points that week also. He just so I would have lost either way. But
Oh, interesting. I'm just saying. That's cool. I'm just looking at week 8 in that league.
I got you. You had to go to week 8.
141 points scored by you. I scored 228.
Yeah, let's look and see. I think half my team was on bye that week.
That's quite the deficit.
Now, that was 5 minutes of me just requesting a little bit of love. So I now need to say, how many did you, Chris Allen, bring home any championships in any league? Is there anything we can hear from you? What did you accomplish in your fantasy leagues this year?
Me personally, I went to 5 championships. These are just my own leagues through both Dynasty and Redraft. I won in 4 of them.
Good job.
So those wind up, and like a couple of them were some pretty decent money leagues. So I actually won one starting Ryan Fitzpatrick against Cincinnati, and I wound up winning that one by about 3 points. It was deciding between that week was deciding between Ryan Tannehill and I forget who they were playing against, and Ryan Fitzpatrick, and he wound up bringing me the W. For my clients, my draft day consultants clients, I had 3 clients this season. All 3 of them made it to the playoffs. 2 of them made it to the championships. Both of them won their championship matchups. Yeah. So
no wonder you didn't want to be in the Super Bowl in this league. You were too busy.
I had, I've got stuff everywhere, man. I'm everywhere.
People that listen to this show, I mean, we do know what we're talking about.
It was a good season. I'll say that.
I sometimes like to act like I don't, but I know what I know.
Yeah, it was a good season this year. I mean, that was without, had some injuries along the way, made a couple of bonehead decisions in terms of starting lineups, but hey, wound up taking it home. So
all right.
I'm not complaining.
What about all your best ball leagues? How did some of those end up? Did you have any success in your best ball leagues?
Yeah, wound up.
Technically, the question best ball leagues, did you cash up or down?
Cashed up.
Good job.
I won 9 leagues, won 8 leagues, and I got second in either 3 or 4. So I get credits to come back and play for free in those. So out of I think my ROI was something or I had a 15% hit rate, something like that. So which is small compared to the total amount of leagues I wound up entering in, but I still wound up making a little bit of money. I think I made maybe $200 or something like that. So I ain't mad at it.
Well, we've talked next year. We're going to do some different things. And I think part of, I thought writing things down the other day, thinking about it, I think we need to, in the off season, deal in some more best ball information and maybe do some drafts on, do a show or 2 where we actually draft some, because I've only done a handful and I've sucked at it. But that's because
I was glad I just made out with what I did.
But it's also because I do it with, I'll say, minimal knowledge, and I've studied enough to know that if you're going to draft a best ball league like it's a standard fantasy league, you're probably going to lose more than you're going to win. There is a little different strategy, and maybe we'll have to get into that a little bit. Now
it's interesting that you mentioned that because part of my off-season content, part of what I do is Dynasty, and we'll kind of set that aside for right now. But since we're talking about best ball, I'd have to do a quick shameless plug. And I've been given kind of the reins over at 4for4 for off-season content in terms of doing best ball.
Oh, great!
So
we'll tie that right in then.
Yeah, so TJ Hernandez, I'll be working with him in order to come up with some ideas for content. But for the time being, I have about 8 gigabytes of draft data from FFPC. So that does more of the high stakes stuff. So I have all of their draft information in terms of players and who got drafted and whatever. So I'll be doing a ton of analysis into the trends and stuff and how people were constructing their rosters in 2019. That's for FFPC. But I'd also requested looking at Fanball because I know that's more of one of the more popular sites for casual players. And so actually just today, myself, Luis Escalante, who's the content manager for 4for4, we reached out to the Paul Charchian, who's anybody who's in the fantasy world knows who Paul Charchian is. Talks with he's on the couch with Sigmund Bloom quite often in the FSGA and all that. He responded to us, and he's going to get us hooked up through their API in order to get some of all of Fanball's data.
We'll do a show or 2. We'll throw them some love and tell them some websites and send some people places.
Yeah, so like in terms of best ball content, like I'll be playing with like all of that data and like doing some pretty detailed breakdowns for some of the things that I've seen between both sites, and kind of helping inform both myself and then whoever wants to talk about best ball and like drafting roster construction and all that. I'll be doing that. I play more on fan ball. That's me personally, because I don't like putting I don't feel comfortable putting that much of my bankroll out on just for 33 or 55 $50
Right.
drafts. I like playing for volume, because I like seeing like how like yeah, so I do mostly just the $10 that's just me.
Right.
But in terms of like just drafting or whatever, yeah, I should have all the data in order to at least talk about that.
And now you say that, I accomplished something this weekend. I'm not a DFS person. We've already talked about that. But last week, the playoffs, I decided to do some DFS, on the playoff games just for some fun. Mm-hmm. I don't know the number. I mean, for someone who truly sets a lineup in his mind that seems like a winning lineup, mm-hmm. Are the odds, is it harder in a 1,900 player tournament? Is it harder to finish second or finish 1,899th?
I would think it'd be harder to place second, just because your lineup has to be fairly unique in order to get to that top of the top of the
I would think
pool.
it'd have to be pretty damn unique to be 1,899th.
Well, no, I would think it'd be pretty common.
I was only one player worse than me in a lineup that I set that had Drew Brees, Michael Thomas. I mean, I had people in it that.
Well, you should have colluded like the folks on The Bachelor and wind up, making yourself $1 million.
No, I did a few, I put a few names in there that I thought, okay, if this guy goes off, you have to do that in a big tournament. You pick a couple. I mean, I did have Marshawn Lynch in that league, and that didn't even hurt me. He didn't hurt me. Michael Thomas and Drew Brees hurt me worse than
they were probably the ones that hurt them.
Marshawn Lynch got me a touchdown.
Yeah.
So. I just thought it was funny. I was like, what are the odds I could come in 1,899th?
Out of 1,900.
I put in 5 lineups, and I didn't make all my money back, but I did cash on 2 of them. Yeah. I just got into the money, but I just like I can understand if someone just truly putting a shitty team out there could finish last place by not really even trying. I was like, I tried. I thought it was a good lineup.
Right.
With 3 Saints in it. And
everybody was betting heavy on the Saints. Like most of my lineups this past, because I made 50 lineups, and I would say that my exposure to the Saints, at least for Drew Brees, I probably had 30 to 40% exposure.
I had 5 teams because I did 5 lineups in 3 different tournaments. And I had Drew Brees as my quarterback on most of those teams, and Russell Wilson was my other in a few.
Yeah.
And again, you just had to pick the right combination. It was really an odd week, and unfortunately, if you picked too many Saints, you weren't. And we didn't even get into that. We're done now. We've been an hour, but what surprised you more in that game? What the Saints didn't do, or what the Minnesota was able to do?
What Minnesota was able to do. I think Mike Zimmer. I mean, we've talked about being Bengals fans. I really wish that he'd still. I wish that Marvin Lewis had been ousted sooner, so Mike Zimmer could take over for the Bengals. Because I would love to see him as the head coach in Cincinnati. But either way, happy for what he's doing in Minnesota. And you can talk all you want about Kirk Cousins being a bad quarterback or whatever. I think he still played well enough in order to. He looked better. He looked better than Drew Brees. Right. He did on Sunday. He looked better than Drew Brees.
All my DFS teams, I didn't have Cook in any of them. I really was thought with that injury.
I was switching out. Yeah, I played a decent amount of Dalvin Cook, and that allowed me to get most of my money back because I was still banking on Drew Brees doing something. But yeah, the way that defense was, that front 7 for Minnesota, Jimmy Garoppolo is going to have a tough time this weekend. I think. I mean, if they wound up playing as they did this past week.
Now with Minnesota is both wide receivers they really are saying pretty questionable. Meaning, I don't think these are rumors. I do think Diggs is really sick, and Thielen is really hurt again. So if both of those don't go, I think it's going to be hard for them. But I do like their defense, obviously.
Same. So I think Mike Zimmer called a perfect game. Kevin Stefanski, the OC, he called a perfect game, and I'm hoping he winds up getting a head coaching position somewhere. If not, hopefully he stays, and they wind up having another decent run in the playoffs next season.
Now the last thing, and we're out of here. The last play.
That was pass interference. I'm sorry.
Well, you just can't call it there. I'm sorry. You can't.
You have to. No, what's the point? What's the point of the rule? I mean, what's the point of the rule?
But they haven't called it all year on any. I mean, what?
I don't care. What's the point of having the rule?
Out of 100 red flags that were thrown for pass interference, I think 6 got overturned.
Well, yeah, that's the league, the front office, for the league, being a bunch of paste eaters. But now, how can you objectively look at that play?
Now, because I think the NFL is not stupid. Now, if that would have happened, I might say at least 2 plays earlier, where it wouldn't have been the last play of the game. Maybe they call it. I do think they couldn't do it. If that's the problem with it. You can't overturn that after. Because I know you say that, and I say that, but there's some things you just can't do without going, oh shit, if we do that now, it's going to be now. And I still don't think it was 100% pass interference either. I mean, you see that all the time. Both guys are always touching each other when they're close plays like that. But
I mean, you could objectively see his head being pushed back. Kyle Rudolph pushing off of him.
See that? I don't buy that. There is that's the problem I have with that. What you just said, I've heard somebody else say. You can't throw a flag because someone's head moves around. We see that too much now, where they throw a flag because the referee thought the quarterback got hit in the face because the quarterback's head whipped, and then when the replay you see, no, he hit him in the shoulder pad. These players aren't stupid anymore. They're learning if they think they're getting fouled to flip. They're flopping like basketball and soccer players now.
But if he pushes off of his chest and it makes his head go back,
I don't care. You can't. If the referee doesn't see the push off, you can't just call someone because their head flipped back.
But then they have to review it. It was a scoring play, so they had to review it anyway. But they didn't, and then they just said it was good.
He never pushed his face. My point is that the head going back. I watched that a couple times too. I didn't see where him shoving that hard.
I will say, in Rudolph's defense, he did have a massive size difference over the guy that was covering him. So sure, the fact that he probably outweighed the dude by 20 or 30 pounds, that probably caused quite a bit of it. But at the same time, I mean, I just the way that it was just quickly brushed off. It's not like they took some time, reviewed it, sent it back to New York, had them review it, and come back and say the call stands. It was just nah, we're done, game over. So that was my problem with the whole. Because if we have the rule and the rule is put in place for situations like that, what's the point of having the rule? And just get rid of the rule.
But and we've had this argument. I still don't think the play that I don't think the play last year that the Saints are involved in that caused this rule. I still say when you watch that replay a million times, you can't. The ball is not catchable in any of those replays. And do I believe the guy hits him? Yes, but I've had that argument a lot. I'm not convinced it was as. I'm not saying it wasn't pass interference, but I'm also not saying it was not the game changer / situation, because I don't think the guy's catching the ball anyway. And that's a whole different thing. But
I say they should have at least tried to look like they were reviewing it, because that's my whole thing. I like the when it happened and all that. That's fine, but if they weren't even going to take the time to review it
anyway, because they don't even say they're reviewing them, they just come by and say it stands.
It's just for me, if we're going to even come back and say that it stands, that's fine. But the fact that they didn't even take the time to review it in that situation,
but the NFL though did come back and say they reviewed it. I mean, they have come out.
It was after the game when they came out and said that. Right. During the game, I think it should have they should have at least tried to make it look
like they were doing it.
Yeah, at the very least. I mean, because at that point, what's the point of having the rule?
The last thing, even though I said that was the last thing, is these whiners and criers on this overtime. Everyone's like, oh, both teams should see the ball and blah, blah, blah. My argument is defense is half the game. If your defense has to go out there, they just need to stop them. Mm-hmm. That being said, I do think I have the solution. Because the argument is always the same with these people, that you shouldn't win or lose a playoff game on a coin toss.
Because normally there is an edge for that.
I believe that part of the argument.
Sure.
So what I believe should happen is take away the coin toss, but still make the rules in overtime exactly the same. And in the playoffs, the higher seed gets the ball first. You've earned the right to have the home game. Why not also have the right to get the ball first in overtime? And then still your other guy's team has to still go out and play defense. It's not because the argument always is the coin flip won it for him. The coin flip won. Okay, take that out of it. Just the team with the higher seed gets the ball in the playoffs when it comes to the playoffs in overtime. They earn that right. They earn that right, in my opinion.
I don't hate that.
If you don't want to change, because see, I still don't think you can change it anyway. People don't understand. I've talked to Wesley and other athletes that play in higher levels. They're wore out. I mean, everyone's just like, let them just play 4 more minutes. They're not the same player in quarter number 5 as they were in 2. So you have to have some stipulation. Meaning, but guys, you know what? If you kick a field goal, yes, we'll let them have the ball again. But if you score a touchdown, you don't. I can accept that. So take away the coin flip. Let the higher seed, which in playoffs is always going to be the home team, let them have the ball first.
Yeah.
If the other team stops them, then boom, we're just playing football, and whoever scores first gets wins. But
I don't hate that.
And you hate that you don't hate it because
I don't hate it. I think that's a decent idea.
See, I'm a problem solver, Chris Allen.
That's problematic because normally I hate most of your ideas. I have to chew on that one. I got to find some reason why it's a bad idea.
You have to find a reason why. I just don't think there is. I think that's the way to do it. You don't need to change any of the rules. Just get rid of the coin toss. And the higher seed earned the right to be the higher seed. To me, they also should earn the right to have the ball first. And
there's got to be something wrong with it. I'll think on it.
Okay. All right, Chris Allen. Where can people find you? What are you going to be doing the next few months? I know you're probably going to take some time off, but I want to give you at least a chance to tell people if something's going on.
You can find me on Twitter at Chris Allen FFWX, and we've got almost there's no time to rest. I mean, my off season is going to be jam packed with either dynasty work. I don't know if folks were able to check out the news on 4for4 Football. Actually announced today that we picked up Nick Whalen.
I saw that on your Twitter.
Yeah, so he signed on with us today. Well, last night, but it was announced today. To work with our Dynasty crew, so you'll be seeing some content rolled out that way. My other podcast, Dynasty Owner's Manual with Adam Wilde, will be recording again for the first time this season tomorrow night. So look for that to drop, and we'll be doing some shows like pretty much like a similar format to what we did last year, bring on some folks talking about some of their takes on some of the prospects, dynasty strategy, things of that nature. And then, of course, for writing, I just talked about like doing some basketball analysis. I've been talking with John Paulson, number 2 ranker on the season for like all categories, but doing some work with him in terms of how weather affects or like how you can tweak projections based off of weather forecasts. And so some of my work doing some of the weather analysis and like his projections. So we've been kind of like I've been helping him, and we've been talking back and forth about how some of the games have affected his projections. So we've been discussing some off-season studies that I can kind of work into. So a lot of work to do over the off-season. All right.
Keep tweeting it out there, and
retweet
it, and we'll go from there. This show, we don't know what we're doing, to be honest. I mean, we're going to come and go probably a little bit this year. I think the last couple of years we've gone through all the weeks, and that's still a possibility we do that, but I know you're busier. And I just think we want to come back with some good content, and maybe, we'll definitely be back. Super Bowl week, we'll be back for the big weeks. Obviously we'll start up before a lot of the regular ones do, but we're probably going to skip a week here or there. Just, unless you just want to get on and chat for no reason at all and talk about other ways I can change the NFL. But, it'll be fun.
Yeah, always.
We do have fun. Yeah. So thanks for joining us. Thanks for listening, Chris. Good luck in all your endeavors in the next few weeks if we don't talk.
Yeah.
And, are you a gambler as far as or just DFS and fantasy stuff? Do you do any of these prop bets? Do you do any, Super Bowl prop things, or do you get into that?
No, that's really never been my thing, to be quite honest with you.
But people say, I don't know, maybe I should try it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Because I know Ohio's coming close to where we're going to be able to play sports book bets, I think.
Yeah.
I think that's coming, where you can go to one of the local racetracks or casinos and play sports things. I don't know. There's something fun about having a couple bucks on the line. But again, thanks for joining us. And you know what? We'll see you in the near future. Chris, say goodnight.
Good night.